Hello and welcome to Burnout, the weekly drag racing show. I'm your host, Wes Buck, and I am so excited to have you. Before we dive into what is going to be an action-packed episode of Burnout, let's check in with my co-host, Mike Galimi and Alex Taylor. How are you guys? Mike, doing all right up there in New York?
I'm doing okay. Lockdown, still good, but we're getting by.
Fantastic. How about you, Alex?
I'm doing good in Arkansas, sunny weather, and we got stuff moving in the shop, so it's a good day.
You guys fall in line, do the same thing I'm going to tell everybody else to do. Pull those belts tight. Let's get going.
The drag racing world remains almost entirely on pause as the end of April looms largely on the horizon. While sources indicate that the NHRA is optimistic as to a return to action June 5th, 6th, and 7th in Gainesville, Florida, Gainesville Raceway Park, the situation remains fluid. It's our hope here at Burnout that we're actually doing burnouts in the very near future, but we're not exactly holding our breath. That's not to say the drag racing community is simply sitting on their hands. Last week's private test session held by Darlington Dragway and Carolina Dragway produced a slew of notable happenings, including Mark Mickey and Jason Carter clicking off a 3.80 second pass in their world-renowned blue Chevy Malibu in Pro 275 trim, as well as NHRA Pro Mod veteran Chip King dipping into the low 570s with his supercharged Mopar. Burnout can confirm that behind-the-scenes conversations are taking place at this very moment to organize many more of these private test sessions in the coming days and weeks at a host of facilities across the country. We're not entirely sure that this won't become the new norm for drag racing. Multitude of private test sessions, invite-only happenings taking place for the foreseeable future. Bill Bader Jr. and his Summit Motorsports Park in Norwalk, Ohio dominated the headlines in recent days as the well-known trend-setting owner, operator, promoter made waves with a proclamation of returning to action no matter what. Earlier this week, however, Bader posted an update to the track's official Facebook account saying that unwinding and rebuilding his 2020 schedule during a global pandemic had proven impossible. He went on to say that he and his team would be working hard to secure a reopening date and a new schedule as soon as possible. Another bold move came from Zach Jones, promoter behind Radial Fest at Huntsville Dragway in Alabama, when he made an announcement that his event would go on as planned May 1st and 2nd. The spring edition of Radial Fest will follow spectator to square footage guidelines as regulated by the CDC, but otherwise will go on as originally intended. A lack of places to race has not stopped racers from pressing forward. NFL superstar and hardcore drag racer Fletcher Cox posted photos of a brand new Pro Mod style Camaro destined for Radial vs. the World competition within the last few days. Justin Little Country Swanstrom also debuted a brand new tube chassis car that will see action in Discovery Channel's No Prep King series. And that is the Week in Review.
Now let's dive into this week's three big things. Once again, we're covering a lot of ground here on Burnout. We're going to talk a little bit about how motorsports manufacturers have dived in to help with the COVID-19 crisis, a little bit about how those same motorsports manufacturers might feel a little bit of a pinch on the other side of this deal, and follow up with how this will have this COVID-19 global pandemic what kind of lasting impact it will have on the sport of drag racing. So, Mike, let's get after it, buddy.
Yeah, so COVID-19, obviously, front and center with all of our topics lately, but companies have done a great job of kind of moving out of their comfort zone and into segments they probably normally wouldn't be active in. VP Racing Fuels yesterday announced their hand sanitizer program that's available shops, racetracks, pretty much any industry at this point. It's great product. They've already got packaging, they've already got product produced, ready to ship, and for when companies start opening back up, they're gonna need to rely on guys like that. Another one is Manton push rods, where, high quality racing push rods and street push rods. And here they are making, parts for ventilators. And, they tried to get a contract with the state of California. Unfortunately, it fell through, but they switched gears on the fly rather quickly.
I have to say that, for me, it's inspiring. I say this a lot, but my heart grows a couple sizes when I hear things like that, because it's for one, it's the nature of racers. We talk about their optimistic nature, and we also have to identify that they are problem solvers at their core. racers are innovative problem solvers. And I'm just proud of our whole industry, because when you start seeing things like VP Race Fuels making hand sanitizer and Manton, and I know that there have been a multitude of companies. Last week's guest, Steve Batusik at Automotive, they were reaching out to their state legislators, trying to figure out how they could help, what they could make, how they could be involved with being a part of the solution, and not so much just identifying the problem and living with it. So it's been a really cool thing to see, man. And I don't know if, it's just cool. It fills my heart with pride.
It's cool, and it makes you proud to see that they're willing to step out of their comfort zone maybe and just like switch gears at the call to help out everybody else. I think that says a lot about the companies, and it says a lot about the companies that you're purchasing from. It shows, how what their true values are and how they believe in operating.
I don't know about you guys, and I've got to have some VP Racing Fuels hand sanitizer. Like,
I'll feel a lot cooler
as much
that way.
hand sanitizer, yes, as much as we're all going through right now, if I'm going to be doing that and using it 500 times a day, I want it to be, from the mad scientist at VP Race Fuel. So it's a cool thing. And again, to see them do it with, obviously they're trying to sell some of this stuff, but it's swooping in to try to help and be a part of the solution. It's a cool thing to see. Mike, what else you got for us? Alex, I think it's actually your turn, isn't it?
It is. It's my turn this time. So following up a little bit with manufacturers, I think something that needs to be kind of discussed is the parts crunch that I'm worried we might end up seeing as we see this play out. So I think we can all attest that like getting parts is hard to do right now as is, without a pandemic or anything. Like the build process, once you get the parts gathered, progresses so much faster. I think, we're already seeing our manufacturers and people we're buying from saying, down the line, we have somebody who can't produce right now. So now we're 8 weeks out and on this, which puts us out, this many weeks on getting stuff. I don't know how that's going to play out when we get back to the track, or people building right now, or, later as they're trying to get stocked back up. I don't know. We're seeing that a lot already.
I feel like back in the early days of Ford drag racing, when it wasn't cool to build one of those cars, and to get the hard parts, we were always like fifth or sixth down the line behind every other segment. So
right.
Before it was easier because you could plan for it. This one's kind of affects everybody. But yeah, I mean, I could see it being a problem with manufacturing come a month from now.
And I know that this is painfully difficult to forecast for. Like,
right.
There's no way to really gauge where, I'm sure some of these guys are, most of these companies are well resourced and have the manpower internally, the brain power to examine
right.
these things and make great decisions, of course, but it's still such an unknown. We're all in.
They can only do so much.
So,
they can only do so much.
And I mean, like, talking to JC from Strange Engineering, and they're ready for, I know Wes, you've said this, string of races for the NHRA Nitro teams. And luckily they have material in place, and they're still operational. So because of other industries they're in. So, they're geared up for the pro level side of things. But, what about the grassroots racer, which makes up so much of this industry, enormous part of it. So.
Right.
It's like, and I don't know what you can, it's one of those things where it's really hard to get spun out about it, because it's going to be a process, for the places that have had to shut down, it's a process to start back up, to source materials. I know lots of companies were canceling purchase orders, right? So then as soon as we fire back up, all those purchase orders have to be reissued. Machines have to start running again. People have to come back to work. And it just, at the end of the day, we've got to get people back to work. We got to get racers racing, fans in the stand. And it's going to be a challenge, but it's definitely, I know, weighing heavily on the minds of everyone. And that kind of is a great segue into my contribution to this week's Three Big Things. Is I just wonder what kind of lasting impact this is going to have, this COVID-19 global pandemic is going to have on drag racing, and specifically manufacturers of consumable items, right? Spark plugs, tires, belts, hoses, all these things that are replaced fairly regularly, valve springs, all valve train components for that matter. It's an issue right now, but I wonder how significant will the issue be next winter, right? Because we're obviously going to experience a tough time in this very moment, but I'm almost maybe not more concerned, but certainly very concerned about how we're going to handle this next winter when people aren't doing their rebuilds, maybe aren't freshening up everything the way they typically would be.
I think you have to look at each segment individually, right? Consumables is going to be a big one with, tire sales for the month of April and gas sales, race fuel sales, gone. like it's for this month, maybe next month, and severely reduced at least over the next couple of months. So I think a lot of those companies are going to go back and look at, I think, some of the bigger hard parts, like Vortech Supercharges, who we're having on next, our first guest. Those guys, if you're planning on buying a supercharger, as long as you're still there financially, you're going to make that purchase. It may just be 2 months later than you normally did. So like you said, there's going to be that quickly ramp up for certain product lines, and other product lines, these companies have to adjust, and sales are going to be pretty bad this year.
Well, and I can't determine what the response is going to be, right? Is everybody going to dive in to these projects or go right back to where they were? Or is everybody going to kind of put a couple of toes in the water and crawl, walk, run? It's an interesting situation. Alex, I keep cutting you off.
It's okay. I think it's interesting too to see like compare some of the companies that are the more immediate consumables, like you're saying, the spark plugs and the tires and all that. They aren't going to have the sales right now. Hopefully that picks up and they can carry that through later when we get back to racing. Still, they count on those, like, the in-season time, I would say, and then we'll go into off season a lot sooner. And then we have the other companies who are going to count on more of the long term, like you're saying, like, for smaller racers, maybe valve train components later. And so like you're going to see, I think, different parts of the industry affected at different points in the season and the rebuild season. So I don't know, it'll be spread out, I think, but we'll see it.
This week for Reaction Time, we're going again back in the archives, back to 2013, Indianapolis Raceway Park. The NHRA US Nationals, one of the most celebrated drag races in the history of the known universe. And this was a rough one for a personal friend of mine, Tim Tyndall, when his Pro Mod Camaro got out of shape a little beyond the 330 feet mark, and he went on a wild ride. Alex, Mike, have you guys seen this batch of photos?
It's definitely, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, I mean, I remember the video. I remember watching it. I remember, the series of photos that came out of it, just absolutely incredible.
Like, I can't imagine, like, the in-betweens of that, because you go from it's bad to, like, it's really bad, like that. So I'd like to see the video.
It really does. This is the scary part of when these cars leave the racing surface. When they go beyond those concrete guard walls, it is such an unpredictable series of events. Fortunately, as I like to point out every week on Burnout when we talk about one of these unfortunate situations, Tim did walk away from this situation. It took him a little while. He was rushed to the hospital there in Indianapolis and was later eventually cleared after a good little bit of time and recovery. But this was a real testament to the safety that exists with a modern Pro modified chassis, because the fact that he was able to get out of this car at all is nothing short of a miracle. But it just goes to show you how quickly things can go awry, because I think almost every one of these Pro Mod drivers have been in one of those situations where they're in a competition moment. They can see the other car out of their peripheral vision, and it's that split-second decision. Do I whack the throttle? Do I stay in it? I'm a little over in the marbles, and this is when it goes too far and things get bad in a hurry. And if you look at this photo, shout out to Mark Rebelis, one of the greatest photographers in the history of drag racing. Mark captured this moment. It is, again, a scary moment in time, but an incredibly powerful image. I don't know if you noticed, Alex, Mike, there's a Lexan window flying off. There's a wheel flying out. The fuel cells flying down the racetrack. It's you realize how much stuff's bolted onto these cars in a hurry when it starts flying off.
I would love to know, like, to hear his perspective as this happens, because I can say, like, being in, talking to racers or being on the track myself, time slows down. So like, while those pictures are just like bam, bam, bam for us, I don't know. I talk to people that say that, I remember this, like, time is so slow in that instance. So sometime it'd be interesting to talk to somebody that's been through that.
Well, and I can tell you from being on the starting line during this moment, I was standing on the starting line when this happened. And it's weird because even my memory of it is slow initially, and then it's really fast, right? Yeah. Because I vividly remember the car washing out, drifting over to the starting line or to the center line, and I had this thought and it's crazy to think about how many thoughts go through your head in this really quick, this moment in time. But I'm going, oh, he's out of it. We're done. Loading up early. Dang it. You know what I mean? Like one of those things where I'd already kind of acknowledged that, okay, he's going to let out of it. The race is over. Dang it. We lost, whatever. The next thing you know, the car's flying through the air. And it's just, it's in those moments. I think that was one of the times that I talk about this a lot, but the thing that drag racers, that we don't say enough about drag racers, yourself included, Alex, but racers from all walks of the life, is the courage that's involved in doing this, because I think a lot of times on the outside looking in, people are like, oh, it's no big deal. You jump in one of these cars, you mat the gas, and you drive it in a straight line. And while, there's all sorts of nuances to this that we don't have the time to argue, but what is often undersold or understated, not talked about nearly enough, is the courage it takes to strap into one of these things, hug and kiss your wife, your kids, your friends, and know that this might be it. And this is a real shock to the system of what can happen when things go damn near as wrong as they can possibly go.
As they say, everybody's a racer till something goes wrong. Then you see the difference there.
I think it's a testament to SFI, right? I mean, I've been in a lot of those meetings with NMRA and NMCA, and just the reactive nature to get to this point where a guy like Tyndall could walk away from that. I mean, just if you saw the thing on video, it's like, oh my God, you're like, this is a fatality. That's the first thought. And it's a testament to the safety built into these cars and the preparation these guys have with all the gear, whether it be, head and neck restraints, the cages, the padding, all of it. And it continues to be refined as we learn more and see more.
The cool thing about these type of, about that safety thing is that in this moment in time, I think it's finally become fashionable to be that guy with all the stuff, right? I think there was drag racers by and large are cowboys, right? I call them concrete cowboys all the time. These guys they're risk takers by nature. So it seems like only recently, though, guys like Stevie Fast, who are really vocal about their safety efforts. Erica Enders, another very vocal driver about how seriously they take safety, constantly advocating, changes or in proactive changes, not just reactive changes. And I think it's cool that here in 2020, it is fashionable to have an awesome helmet, to have an expensive helmet, to wear a head and neck restraint, to have a multi-layer, a nice suit, and to have all the different things, the poured seat. A lot of those things were like racers would resist it because it wasn't going to cut 400ths off their elapsed time, right? Their car wasn't going to be more consistent or any quicker or faster, but it's finally become fashionable to have every possible safety bell and whistle. And I know that's exactly what helped Tim Tyndall walk away from this very scary moment in 2013.
Today we have with us Greg Anderson, 4-time NHRA Pro Stock World Champion, to talk to us a little bit about drag racing, or rather the lack of. Greg, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. We're making it. We are making it. So as a racer, have you been dealing with all this downtime? We got to know.
Well, unfortunately, we haven't been able to act much like racers lately. It's crazy times. Ever since the Door Slammer Nationals back in March, we've been home. We've been at the shop for a couple of weeks working until the governor shut down our state. And then I've been at home working on all those projects that my wife says I never could get done in the past. Drag racing is kind of a 24/7 deal to race this Pro Stock class. So we don't get much time to work on our yards, our cars at home. And I've caught up on every bit of it. I got the cars all in tip-top shape thanks to Summit Racing Equipment. A lot of FedEx deliveries, and I've got all the cars and it's spiffed up. New set of wheels on the wife's car from Race Star Wheels. And the cars are great. Now I'm on yard projects. And I'm telling you, I've got, I think, the best looking yard in the neighborhood. I'm expecting Fox Sports to come by anytime and video this place and say, wow, I wonder who lives here. Crazy.
You're getting caught up.
I want to see that.
Hopefully, I think we're all pretty confident in early June, restart date for the NHRA schedule with everything that's going on with all the states reopening up. Getting back to Pro Stock racing, and they changed the point systems given the shortened schedule. Kind of, did you like to switch back to the old style of points where it's a cumulative as opposed to the countdown to the championship?
I actually do. I've said that ever since we switched to the playoffs type scenario. I like the old way. I just feel, and I've always felt, that if you're going to be the world champ, you need to prove to the entire course of the year that you can win at every type of racetrack, every type of weather condition, every type of racetrack, any kind of altitude conditions, anywhere. You got to be strong really over the whole deal instead of just a small grouping of races. And that's kind of what we have in the countdown. We have pretty much similar type weather conditions. It's cooler that time of year. And, really honestly, it's just a small sample of what the class really is. It also, I think, diminishes from the rest of the regular season, where it makes some of the other races maybe not so important. And I'm just as guilty. I find myself saying several times if I make a mistake, oh, well, doesn't matter till the countdown. Doesn't matter till the countdown. Well, guess what? It's countdown now when we start back up in June. So I like that. I love that. I think that's the way things should be. And it's just going to be an expanded countdown. That's all it's going to be.
That's awesome. Like this has been a good episode. Because just a powerful response, Greg. And I can't really argue that, because we've seen it time and time again where a racer gets hot at just the right time. And it is, we're in the great mine shaft conditions a lot of the times, it's 60 and 70 throughout the end of the year. And I agree 100%. I want to see a guy, prove that they deserve to be a champion throughout the course of the year. So I'm glad. This is a phenomenal choice to have you on here. That was a powerful way to start, Alex. Good work.
Nice job, Alex.
Wow. Look at us. Look at us go, man. Look at us go.
Arkansas.
So let's talk a little bit about Jason Line retiring in this season and how that looks for him, and kind of like how that's going to change the dynamic of KB Racing. Are you guys looking for a new driver? What's going on?
Well, yeah, everything's still up in the air. The first thing I tell everybody is I figure I got about 8-9 months yet to change his mind. That's goal number one for me. I'm going to try and change his mind because I like things the way they are. And he's obviously an invaluable person at the racetrack. He's great at the shop, obviously. He's, the head of our engine department and the development department of building power. But once we get to the racetrack, he takes care of all the EFI tuning at the racetrack. And that's 80% of the project anymore at Pro Stock races. He takes care of all our customer cars. And I'm not sure what we're going to do there yet. And then as far as a driver, that's another can of worms. Do you go young? Do you go experienced? Do you go, the type of personality that John Force is? Do you go somebody that's more serious about racing? There's just a lot of people that got to answer that question. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But as I say, my first goal is to change his mind.
And you probably have an opportunity to do that, right? Because this would be like, not that maybe this is a great way to go out with this whole calamity that we're enduring together, but it'd be cool to see him have an opportunity to do it the right way. If this is going to be your swan song, you hate to see it be, the train wreck.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's wondering right now, have I sat in a Pro Stock car for the last time already? And I don't think he can live with that. I don't think he can go out that way. So, maybe it'll play in my favor and he'll have to try again and come back next year, depending on how things go this year. But as you said earlier, I'm very confident we're going to get restarted June 1st or June 5th in Gainesville, if not very close to it. And it's just, people are getting itchy to get back to work. Obviously, our economy's taking a hit and people need to get back to work. But I think we've all learned so much in the last couple of weeks about what this deal is, what this virus is, how to protect yourself, how to act in public or not in public. And I think that's going to help us all going forward, regardless whether there's a virus out there or not to be caught. So I think we'll all live a little bit different, but I think we know now how to live safer and protect ourselves and protect others. Just in everything we do. We'll wash our hands more. We'll be careful of what we do and careful not to sneeze on anybody or cough on anybody. We kind of got away from thinking about that before. Now we're all thinking about it. So it's going to help us going forward regardless. And I think we're darn close to getting ready to get back out in society.
Well, that's certainly, I hope that's the case. And I'm confident as well. I'm curious, and this isn't necessarily one of our scripted questions, but being that we have a superstar here with us that is used to dealing with legitimate fanfare, I'm serious.
Who's that?
I mean, Greg, can you imagine a scenario? Because you listen to LeBron James in the NBA, and you listen to some of these Major League Baseball players. They can hardly wrap their heads around the idea of competing, playing their game, competing in front of empty grandstands. Have you started to process that as a possibility, or could you give us some insight as to how that would impact you, not only as a driver, but just as an enthusiast and fan of the sport?
Yeah, that just takes everything out of it for us. I can't tell you how many times I roll out there and I do my burnout and I put the car in reverse, and you've got 10, 15 seconds pretty much to do whatever you want to do. I look up in the grandstands every time and I say, wow, what a crowd today. It's cool. That gets your heart pumping. That gets you jacked up and ready to leave the starting line. So I don't know what I'd do if they weren't in the grandstand. I don't think we could function as a sport without them. We needed to be there. We needed to be there. And I think it's going to be fine. Like I say, we've learned so much more about how to handle ourselves in public and stuff. I think we're going to be fine, and we'll all do the right things, and we're going to be just fine. We're all shook up right now, but I think if you were to look into into the globe a week down the road or 2 weeks down the road, we're going to be a whole lot more confident about what we can do and can't do, and ready to go forward. So, spin that calendar forward, and I think we'll be ready to go.
That's certainly the hope. I'm curious, one more like off script question that I've got to ask because we've got you here is you talk about how much we've learned. And I agree. I think we've learned a ton as a society, just all the hygiene things and just taking care of ourselves. Has this time at home and time to, because so many, I don't know about you, but you get so wrapped up, you're so constantly in motion that you don't even have the time to maybe fix things or change things because you got to get to the next race. Have you been able to lean on this time to say, hey, we need to do this a little different, or hey, we need to operate this part of our program a little different?
No question. It's given us a lot of time to think. We can't be at our shop working right now, but that doesn't mean we can't think. So we've thought a lot. We've had a lot of time to think, a lot of quality time to think, and got a lot of great ideas. So that day we do step foot back in the shop and start digging in towards preparing for the restart of 2020, it's going to be, everybody going to be full hands on deck, and we got a lot of things to work on, a lot of great ideas. All of us, Jason, myself, Rob Downing, our crew chief, a lot of great ideas on what we can do different with our race cars to make our race cars better. So it's going to be fun when we get back. It's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be fun. You love it when you come to the shop with a new idea every day, and we got a whole bunch of them. So when we get back, it's going to be neat, and I think we're going to have a whole lot better product with our race cars and our engines when we get back to the racetrack. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to the restart of the season.
At what point do you think you overthink some of the challenges and changes? Because the more time you have, the more things have to be going through your head.
That's generally the case, but I think in this case, you've had time to think about it, and then you shut down for the night and you rethink again the next day. So you say, man, maybe that's not such a good idea. So you got time to correct yourself, and you don't jump into making rash decisions. So everything is certainly well thought out, and I don't know, you can make all of the best laid plans in the world, and it just doesn't matter till you put them on the racetrack. You have no earthly idea when you're going to get till you get there, but we got a lot of confidence with the ideas, and that's the way it should be. You should feel great about them, should feel confident and excited to get back to work, and that's absolutely where we're at right now.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us, buddy. Again, to be able to have a decorated champion racer on here as we get this project off the ground, we really appreciate your time. I hope you guys stay safe out there, and my goodness, I hope we get to see you in Gainesville June 5th, 6th, and 7th.
I hope you're right. Thanks, Wes. Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to get back to see y'all in person. I'm counting the days, and I'm telling you, be confident. It's going to happen.
Everybody, our next guest is Russel Miller, owner of Darlington Dragway, who he's owned it for the past several years, I think about 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. He went through a bunch of renovations, putting a lot into the place, getting it great events going on, great track prep going on. I know I'm a big fan of some of the no-time racing that runs there during the week. It reminds me of the old Englishtown days, which is always fun. And Russell, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Not bad, not bad. You guys just came off a test session the last few days, and one of the first ones to pull it off. Can you kind of just walk us through the process it took to get to that point, working with the health officials and the state to get permits to do this sort of thing?
Sure. We were, the first thing I did, I'd noticed that the golf courses were opened up in South Carolina, and it kind of gave me the idea, hey, if they can be on the golf course in an open range like that, why can't we drag race? So I called my local sheriff, Tony Chavis, and had a conversation with him on Saturday evening, and he agreed. He says, we got to get this economy open back up, and he says, and folks like you guys need to be able to get out and try to make a living and run those race cars. So we put together a plan to do testing. And basically what we were doing was we were, checking people when they come in, limiting how many people could be in their crew, just the car, the driver, and 4 crew. We were giving each team 1,000 square feet, which was actually indoor rules. Okay. So we're in outdoor. So if we could give them 1,000 feet of room, 1,000 square feet of room, that would be plenty, we felt. So we did that. We did the 1 car to the starting line at the time. That way we could practice the 6-foot social distancing. And I think the real kicker for it that really made the South Carolina Commerce take notice was that we said that we could and would use the local sheriff's department to help police it. So I think that gave it some rigidity. So anyway, we submitted that in.
And
the sheriff actually gave me
the plan you had
a
to
link.
present them, Russell? Is that a plan that you guys had to
Yes.
put in writing?
And what it was there was a form that said, you had to, why are you essential?
Okay.
So what I did is I went down and filled everything out. And at the bottom, I said I wanted to be able to do testing under very strict social distancing guidelines. And then I went on to say just what I told you about what I was going to do. And this was on Saturday. Well, I didn't look at my emails any on Sunday. When I come into work on Monday morning at PD Fleet, it was there. I said, wow, we just got approved to open up for testing. So I obviously called Rhett, my general manager, and said, hey, we need to get busy. We already had one scheduled, for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday with Justin Carmack from Carmack Engineering and a lot of his cars that he works on. So we called him up and said, hey, it's on. So then so I said, I need to share this information. I said, because everybody else is kind of sitting back thinking we can't be open. So I called Carolina, the House of Hook, and talked to Jerry Hall. I said, hey, dude, this is how you do it. I gave him my plan. He tried it. It took him a couple times. And I think, like I said, the deal with the sheriff's department, that way there was a county official there. You see what I'm saying? I think that's really what pushed it through.
You've got someone there policing it. Yeah, you're
exactly.
Absolutely.
So about 3 times before he got it. Then once he got it, I said, okay, well, let's open up some more. So I called Tony Brown up at Union Dragway. Same deal. He got approved the first try. And we tried Pageland, same thing. So we got, and I think that Tony Brown helped Greer Dragway, got them opened up.
Wow.
So this past weekend, we were testing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and so were all those.
What was the mood? And I'm bouncing around here, but I just got to know because
sure.
I'm sure that was like a rewarding. How rewarding was that? Like to open, but to see all these other tracks open.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, I got my track open. That gives me an upper hand on everybody else. That's everybody think, well, that's what you're going to do. Well, no, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is get everybody opened up. That's awesome. And that's what I wanted to do. I actually got more self-gratitude from opening other tracks than I did actually opening up my own. It was a feel-good thing.
I have goosebumps.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I do.
And they're all good guys. We all try to work together. We do schedules. We communicate. You know what I'm saying? A lot more communication in this arena. It can only help everybody. People not working together. That's what it boils down to.
I think it's great to see, because we were discussing earlier on the show about how parts companies can't continue producing parts if there's not a need for it and all that. So it starts at the racetrack. People got to be out there using their cars. So I think it's awesome that you went and took the steps to make that happen and get racers back on the track while following everything. With that said, what kind of racers mainly did you get out there to the track? What was their response? I mean, I can only imagine they were excited about it.
Oh yeah. It kind of goes back to a conversation that me and Justin Carmack had. Those guys that's making parts, that's tuning cars, that's doing all this stuff for the racers, for their cars outside of the drag strip itself, they're dead in the water if these cars aren't moving. They can't make tuning dollars. They can't do part sales. They can't, none of that. All that stops. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's like you cut off the faucet. Mm-hmm. All right. So whenever, and I keep using Justin Carmack as an example because that's the one that was actually helping us with this. It was already scheduled for him. You see what I'm saying? So, but when I told him, he was like, "All right, it's on, dude. Let me get off the phone. I got a bunch of emails. I got to get it all out. How he is. He's kind of on the tire anyway. So yeah, absolutely. The racers were ecstatic about it. We had a very good day. The weather was perfect. The track was great. We had NHRA Pro Mods, PDRA Pro Mods. We had top sportsman cars. We had mountain motor. Roy Hill was here. I mean, the legendary Roy Hill was here racing. Exactly. Chip King, Mark Mickey was here on Thursday. I mean, yeah, those guys were excited. They want to get back to doing what they do, just like we do. We want to get back to racing.
So what's your strategy on the racing or the testing program specifically, Russell? Do you do this as much as you possibly can? Or are you going to start an outreach program to get more tuners to bring their customers in, or what do you see this looking
Yeah,
like?
we actually have a page, and I think it's Darlington. What is it, Rhett? Darlington Dragway Testing on Facebook. And we welcome everybody to come and join that Facebook page, and we do testing. We're a business. We're open 5, 6, 7 days a week. So we do events on the weekend. We do testing tunes on Wednesday nights. So we do private testing for professional teams as well as grudge racers. Grudge racers come in here with those bad small tire cars and test with us. Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Moving forward, obviously testing is easily controlled, and you guys have your set specifications. Looking down the road, 6 months down the road, end of the summer, beginning into the fall, is there any indication of getting back to somewhat normalcy on the event side of it, in terms of having fans and not having 1,000 square feet between pits?
I think our next, obviously South Carolina is doing a soft opening right now, like a lot of states are doing. They're starting to let, and flea markets. They letting flea markets open and stuff, which are open air type businesses. I think where we're headed right now is we can probably do events to a certain extent, no fans. I think that's our next move. Is probably more towards bracket racing. Because bracket racing, you can kind of have an event bracket racing without a whole lot of fans because it kind of self sustains itself. But we definitely want to get to the point where we have fans in the stands, because that's, those guys, those ticket sales, they're what pays the purses, pays the lights, pays, we got to get there. And I think we will get there hopefully before the end of the year. And, because everybody's wanting to go to work, and, drag racing, Wes Buck is in the magazine business. We're in the drag racing business. Carmack's in the parts business, tuning business. All these guys have got to get back to work. We can't just sit back and just stay this way. It's got to move forward.
From your mouth to God's ears, Russell. I mean, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
This whole industry is driven by racers at the track, and I honestly
Absolutely.
think that there may be, and this is a little bit of looking into the crystal ball, but I wonder if this isn't going to give some promoters specifically. Sometimes I think drag racing, we get so aggressive with these crazy purses, right? We go so hardcore with the money, and it's all about paying as much money as humanly possible. And that, as you said, is driven entirely by ticket sales, or largely by ticket sales. And I wonder if the silver lining to this whole situation, this whole tragedy that we're living through, won't be the fact that it will kind of reduce the expectations. Right? Because I think there was a moment in time here not too long ago that if you were going to have a pro mod race, you had to pay some crazy amount of money, right? If you were going to have a radial race that anybody paid attention to, you had to pay a crazy amount of money. And without the fans in the stand, and with some of the struggles that our industry is surely going to face, I think it may just reduce some of the pressure on promoters to play that game, right? Where your marketing effort is almost entirely about how much money you can put out there. And I'm hoping that our sport can kind of embrace the opportunity to reset some of those expectations and maybe be a little bit healthier and sustainable over the long term on the other side of this, man. So Russell, seriously, thank you so much. Incredible insight. And it really did. It gave me goosebumps to hear you talk about getting these other tracks open. It was, I venture to say you will be remembering this moment for the rest of your life. I know we all will, but that was a big deal. You picking up the phone and calling those other tracks. I know they appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate you being a part of Burnout, brother. This week, we're checking in with Lance Keck at Vortech Engineering. He leads the charge for Vortech's racing operations and is also their engineering manager. Lance, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you being here. And I'm just curious, to kind of get this whole thing started, we have to touch on this COVID-19 crisis a little bit, but I want to try to skip that if we can and just ask, how does Vortech go about creating new products specifically for the drag racing market?
It starts in several kind of different areas. Marketing, they take a look at what's going on with the different sanctioning bodies. Once they have an idea of what direction they think they might want to go, then engineering gets involved, and we determine whether we have a product or we don't. If we have a product that fits the class and the sanctioning body, At least we start there, and then we'll look at the product and its performance and determine whether it needs some help. So that's kind of the way it starts through the
Well,
market.
just as a little bit of a, do you guys, is there someone with their head on a swivel looking at like classes that are popping up in drag racing that you see as, particular hot spots that you guys want to play in?
Yeah, that kind of falls on my shoulders a little bit. And I do keep an eye on what appears to be a good class for our product.
What do you think, with that said, has led to the explosion in popularity of centrifugal blowers used in classes like Top Dragster and Top Sportsman?
It gives those guys quite a bit of flexibility. If they're going for NHRA Top Dragster or Top Sportsman, they have a speed limit and not a mile per hour limit, but a time limit. And then if you race in some of the other stuff, they have quick bracket stuff that I've heard of that they can run the NHRA stuff kind of at one boost level, and then go to some of these other faster 8th mile venues, and then they can turn it up and go from there.
And it seems like there's just a ton of reliability and consistency with the combination, right? I mean, a guy doesn't have to turn the engine a ton of RPM to make power and run well. And I'm not trying to knock on other combinations or anything, but it's a more straightforward thing where you're not changing nitrous jets all the time or anything like that. I think it's been really cool to see, and I'm actually a little bit surprised that it's taken as long as it has. But if you pay attention to, like you mentioned, Lance, those PDRA, Top Sportsman, Top Dragster classes, I mean, hell, the top 10 in points, it's like one after the other, centrifugal blower, and it's massively moving into the NHRA Top Sportsman, Top Dragster ranks. So it's a cool thing to see.
It gives them quite a bit of flexibility. The motors are, they can run them all year. The blowers, they can run them all year. For some of the guys that are on, a budget, it's an option for those guys to move into a class that they can go fast in. So yeah, I agree.
So with all the focus on racing, you guys have done a great job, obviously stepping up big and, in a lot of the heads up arenas. But the street market's still pretty much number one for Vortech. How have you guys done with EPA? I know it's been a hot topic with other segments within SEMA. Some of the tuning manufacturers have some issues. How have you guys dealt with the EPA regulations as well as CARB? I know you guys have been involved for so long in both those segments.
We work closely with SEMA Garage. They've been a huge help. The EPA and CARB, mainly CARB, is really in a transition period, and they're looking at a lot of different aspects that I hope in the end doesn't cost the individual manufacturers more money, and stretches the process out for acquiring EOs. So we work pretty closely with SEMA Garage. We also work with the guys at CARB. It is a struggle, though. You're right.
I was just gonna say, I know Wes talked earlier about touching on the corona a little bit later. I just want to follow up on kind of a question I brought up in our 3 big things earlier, is how has the COVID issue impacted you guys at Vortech already with getting parts to build the blowers or anything like that? Have you noticed it yet?
No, we're doing pretty good, actually. We do the majority of our manufacturing internally. And so far, raw materials has been easy to acquire for the most part. We've had a little bit of a slowdown in some of the forgings, but otherwise we're doing business as normal. We have some military and aerospace contracts that kind of keep us going. So we're doing pretty good.
Thank you so much, Lance, for being a part of this 4th ever episode of Burnout. We're getting better all the time, and we surely appreciate you joining us. Well, how about it? Another episode of Burnout. Tons of fun. Alex, Mike, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Alex, you're really growing into this interviewer role.
I know. My first time to introduce somebody, and none other than Greg Anderson.
I don't know who on the production team decided that, but that was really throwing you to the wolves there. I'm sorry, but you did so good. And he played right along too. Greg Anderson, absolute professional, man. I said this and we didn't capture it during the interview, but Mike, you got to admit, dude, that guy's a real personality. Like,
very polished. A lot to say. You kind of see him on TV on Fox broadcast, and he's a little quieter on there, but he was definitely very talkative this episode.
I was proud of him, man. I'm going, this is the type of stuff where we got Wally's lined up behind him. I mean, Alex, as a racer, I just got to know, and we're supposed to be wrapping the show, but Alex, to see that and know that that's even possible, or to know that someone has achieved that, I mean, what goes through your head when you're talking to the student and asking him questions?
I think about the fact that I have my one favorite little trophy won, and I'm like so proud of it. And I'm like, oh, he's got all these trophies. So, I mean,
Well, let me tell you a little secret before we wrap up this week's Burnout. You can buy those trophies on Amazon. You can get anything you want to say you're good at. I have a small collection of motocross trophies, golf trophies, tennis trophies. I kid. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week on Burnout. We'll be back next week, bigger and better than ever. You can count on it. Remember, keep them belts tight.